spun out across the vast cosmos, expanded thus. I am not alone. We are cosmic beings. Spirit births soul. Souls learn. Spirit grows. There's a lot of ways that that can be interpreted. And the way that you do it, you yourself, is absolutely correct. I say that because each of us, as a soul being, tunes into the vibration of life in very unique fashion. And as such, there's something that is birthed and inspired within us as a soul being that we came with in the present incarnation to offer as the gift of our presence. Now, not everyone will willingly accept that, but we each engage with that dance with each other. And there's always that inkling of hope that in this interaction, something will be allowed to move between our individual versions of this reality to enhance the space each of us has come to grow into. So as I sit down today, Saturday, next week is waiting there to unfold. We're in that, you know, which we could, is it kind of a liminal space? I say that because Mercury, right here at 4 degrees of Leo, will actually turn direct on Monday at 4 degrees of Leo. The perspective, I'm going to give you a couple different perspectives, but the perspective of that Leonian dance from um, the zodiacal mandala of Sabian symbols says that this particular degree, I'll just read it to you. A formally dressed, elderly man stands near trophies he brought back from a hunting expedition. Oh, well, yeah, you can feel all kinds of things, with and I am with you who don't believe in the trophy hunting just for the sake of killing and displaying your trophies. But that was the vision for this particular degree of the zodiac. Oops, wrong one. That was the degree before. Here's the real Sabian symbol for this particular degree of the zodiac. Rock formations tower over a deep canyon. I don't know if you can feel this presence, There's the canyon, you can sense it spreading before you. And as an overwhelming presence, this rock formation stands there. Hmm, is it a sentinel of sorts, overlooking, you know, a deep crevice in the land, which obviously didn't have the strength to stand forth as this rock formation on its precipice? Keynote: this structuring power of elemental forces during the long cycle of planetary evolution. Feel that, feel the essence of Leo standing there stalwart, holding strong its essence as the land before it is creased deeply because it didn't have quite that same capacity to hold forth. Now, there's another factor that's in play that I'm going to bring forth. It may not seem like as relevant as you might think. It is the fact that, and I'm bringing it forth because it's part of this grand trine here that's happening between Mars and Pluto and Uranus. And that's this 2 degrees Pluto up here. Pluto. Pluto stands for transformation. Potent transformation, not just, your every kind of day of water becoming mist as it evaporates. No, 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 not. This is transformation totally. Transubstantiation. One thing becomes another. That's a very different level of transformation. Anyway, the Sabian symbol for that particular degree, which happens to be the very same degree that my moon occupied when I was born. The symbol, Sabian symbol, reads, a deserter from the Navy. Now, I'm sure that brings up all kinds of things for you, but I'm going to allow you to sit with that. Feel into the description that Dane Rudger embraces as he takes and expands that vision. Keynote: an individual's self-realization through a crucial repudiation of a collective status which has become unbearable. Feel that. This symbol, I'm going to read a little bit more here. This symbol recalls the one for Scorpio 21 degrees, but the fact that actual desertion is emphasized and reference is made to the Navy suggests that the crisis symbolized here is one implying an irrevocable change of status. Man refuses to accept the type of cultural patterns derive from his society's specific approach to local circumstances and to the universe as a whole, and in another sense, from its particular relationship to the all human collective unconscious. The Navy refers to the ocean, symbol of primordial and unconscious evolutionary forces. He not only refuses to obey orders, he deliberately turns his back on his collective social status. He becomes an outcast, and through this decision, he may definitely individualize his consciousness. Can you feel that transformation totally taking place with that degree of Pluto in early Aquarius? I've had to live into this my entire life because my moon is right there. It's being tickled right now by this transformative energy. Further descriptions of this sapient symbol. This is the third stage of the 61st fivefold sequence. Something with collective social value is being potentially destroyed. But nature is not the destroyer, as in the preceding symbol. Man, the individual, steps out of his bondage to the collective patterns and ideals. He may thus, in quotes, find himself by means of a sharp renunciation of the social birthright. Example, by the crucial process of desocialization. One wing of this kite, grand trine part, and the mini trine, is that plutonic desire to step out of line, being opposed this weekend and into next week by this Mercury down there at 4 degrees of Leo, saying that, there is something quite dynamic potential as we begin this next week that might be asking us to, as we have hopefully and successfully managed to move through the recent 3 weeks of Mercury in retrograde with a functional creative ability to be able to look profoundly at what it is that we are about from a Leonian perspective, that solar set of awareness, our vitality, if you will, was being, put through this experience of trying to make a determination as to our value, making sure that we looked back over matters that we had been through before that could potentially find a deeper root within us as we come to that Leonian level of expression, being out there, being regal, if you will, finding a capacity to shine forth. This is the sun. This is Leo we're talking about. But as the week begins, Mercury, which has stopped at 4 degrees of this sign, is saying, unpack, if you will, the version of your thought process that for the past 3 weeks has had you delving potentially more deeply into that arena of personal expression that Leo represents. And being opposed to the Pluto part of the signature that this kite pattern represents, there are factors in play that say you have the opportunity anyway to have utilized this Mercury retrograde cycle to discover a level of transformation within yourself that has been beckoning your soul to discover. Now, the kite, which is a much longer range set of aspectual pattern that's in play, brings together, that Mars and just going into Libra, saying, I, as a Mars person, I don't feel too comfortable being in the sign of Libra because Mars is the expression of individuality. I want to, um, drive forth with that selfness that I don't really necessarily know where it's going, but the drive, the impulse is there. And Libra is about, the experience of what does it mean to get together with others? You can kind of sense that the Mars being in the sign of Libra is just kind of like, oh my God, I've got to go through this again where I'm being invited to interact with others. And yet there's this, percolating, pounding, driving kind of energy that just wants to erupt in the moment. And Libra's ruled by Venus. There's a sensing of, how can we get along with one another? Not exactly one of the Martian strong points. It is required that Mars be present in all its glory. However, while in Libra, don't expect it to be as dynamically strong as it would normally be. And the opposition that is forming right across the center of this zodiac to those early degrees of Aries, the sign, one of the 2 signs ruled by, you guessed it, by Mars, Saturn, structure, form, trying to contain things within some set of parameters. This is Saturn. It's in Aries. You can kind of sense that, I can almost picture little teeny cracks forming in this perimeter that Saturn is trying to hold together as stuff leaks out. It's Aries after all. There's more that I need to experience in this living process. And Neptune, right there with it, you know, a a realm of illusion potentially. That is, what's it doing? It's assisting those escapees from the Saturnian perspective to say, there is more. Don't hold yourself back. and this opposition with Mars. There's a tension there. That's what oppositions represent from Libra to Aries. Aries self, Libra others. Yet somehow in this mix, there needs to be some level of cohabitation. There's a reason why there are more than just the me present, just the I and everything. The requirement is to, engage with one another, Libra, in a fashion whereby we might experience parts of each other within each other. Have you ever thought of it that way? There's a reason why there are so many of us present. We've each come to bring certain things for consideration that are required by one another in the process of growing our soul awareness. And to add a little extra panache into this consideration, that Uranus down there in Gemini, Uranus says, I am the great awakener. I am Prometheus. I don't want things to stay the same. Can you feel that Pluto transformation being tuned into by this trine from Chiron down there in Aquarius saying, yeah, 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 make the change, shake it up. This is what Uranus is about. And it's in Gemini, that realm of curiosity, that realm of trickster stories that say, this is the way things are from a perspective that you may not have thought of before, but I'm going to spin it for you anyway. Try and keep up. Can you feel the excitement of that kind of energy that this kite is bringing for our consideration right now? And as we go into next week, there we are. Here's Monday. The kite is still in play. The opposition between Mercury down here and Pluto still in play on this day, during the day. I'm not exactly sure when, not necessarily important, but Mercury stands still. And when a planet stands still, it is at its most potent. Picture, if you will, any kind of a situation where something is basically uh, revving up, building energy, getting ready to erupt. It's holding a pattern, a point of focus. And we looked at that rock outcrop on the rim of a canyon. It's been holding for a long time in you know, the formation of our planet, holding strong. On this very same day, Venus and Jupiter, both sitting at 13 degrees of Cancer. What do you think about that? Venus, these are the two most benefic planets. That means they're beneficial to have in your corner. Are they're right together. They're in the sign of Cancer. Cancer represents our capacity to tune into our maternal state, to become aware of what it is that is the foundation, the rock, the core creative principle from which we exist. Our connection to, that footing, our groundedness. It also brings in factors of your ancestral lineage that are in play. Now, Venus wants, as naturally it always does, to determine some set of values for any connection that it's a part of. And Jupiter, well, Jupiter exalted, which means that it's very happy to be in Cancer, is about, how can I make anything I touch become larger? How can I expand its borders, so to speak? Now, picture, if you will, that thing that I was talking about, Saturn and Neptune over there in the early part of Aries, the little energies leaking out from Saturn's container. This Jupiter and Venus, you say, well, hey, they aren't really an aspect to each other. It doesn't matter. They're still energetic signatures that are in play. Excuse me. Let us consider the Sabian symbol for where these two elements, these two beings, actually, these are celestial beings out there in space at the same degree of the zodiac. What does the Sabian symbol have to say about that particular degree? As perhaps some sort of synchronization of how we might be able to utilize two very positive energies that are enhancing each other. The Sabian symbol reads, a very old man. We've got some seniors in this week's Sabian symbols, facing a vast, dark space to the northeast. Now, follow my cursor. This is east from the zodiac standpoint. This is west. Believe it or not, this is south. And this is north. Northeast is over in this direction. One of the handles of the kite, represented by, you guessed it, Uranus. Not necessarily the most stable. The keynote reads, fulfillment in transcending and changeless wisdom. The symbol describes the wise old man, an archetypal figure found in all systems of symbolism. In occult terminology, the northeast is the direction from which spiritual cosmic forces enter the earth sphere. This is probably because the polar axis of the earth is inclined by 23.5 degrees away from the exact perpendicular to the plane of its orbit. Thus, the actual pole of our globe not only differs from the permanent pole of the Earth's orbit, but constantly changes its direction successively, pointing to several large circumpolar stars during the so-called precessional cycle or tropical year or great polar cycle, which lasts somewhat less than 26,000 years. I want you to feel into that idea of 26,000 years as one part of a cycle, one cycle. And then shift your awareness back to the recognition that within just the last 1 to 200 years of humanity's civilization, the amount of changes that we as humans have wrought on this planetary being. where we exist. You might just say, well, I only want to look back 10,000 years, where civilizations lasted for thousands of years. And here we are in our modern society, humanity, trying to survive, if you will, changes that we have made in just the past couple hundreds of years, which are challenging the very structure of this planet that we live on. Can you feel the disparity in our short term version of taking advantage or maybe overtaking advantage of the resources that this planet represents in just a short window of time that is unsustainable by all measures? You know, one of the ironies, as pointed out from a recent webinar that I participated with Michael Mead on, he pointed out that the the political and the economic engines that are running things right now on this planet do not have the capacity to be able to keep up effectively with the changes that are underway that we have created. They just don't have it, and we're hoping as human beings in our particular society, I live in North America, to be able to survive. And we've got a system set up from on top that doesn't have the capacity to even begin to make the dynamic changes required to handle things like climate change. Oh no, there are whole institutions set up at these higher echelons to deny that. It's happening anyway, whether you deny it or not. More reading on the Sabian symbol. Because of this inclination of the polar axis, we have the phenomena of seasonal change. Supposedly, during the early golden age, no such change occurred. A perpetual spring reigned. That would depend on where on the planet you were. This is traditionally the spiritual state. The wise old man faces the changeless reality, the true north, which for us is located in a northeast direction now. He faces the great void, that apparent darkness, which is an intense light, invisible to our senses. We're still, this is still Monday this week. There's a lot of energy afoot. On Tuesday, the moon comes right across and tickles the side of the kite experience. The moon, how we feel. This is why I brought in that conjunction between Venus and Jupiter down there in Cancer, is because the moon, the ruler of that, it's going to, move over that point of focus here in the kite, opposing Mars. And you will have the opportunity on a Mars day to feel, a very lunar term there. What is your part in the expansion, if you will, of this kite kind of energy? Are you on board? You can kind of see, though. Mercury is now still stationary at 4 degrees, but direct, no longer retrograde. When Mercury comes back into its direct motion, this is a time to, test the waters. I would advise doing it gingerly because whatever it is that was experienced by you during this retrograde Mercury cycle, I really hope you did the work. As you as Mercury begins to move forward again, the process of, putting out some of what it is that you gleaned during this Mercury retrograde cycle in Leo as, taking a chance, you know, chances that you might not normally have been inclined to, that you were inspired to consider while Mercury was retrograde. But now that it's direct, you know, be adventurous, take chances, gamble. Well, gamble's a kind of a broad term that we often put into the scenario of, whether I'm going to win or lose money. But it's so much more. It's taking chances, gamble, and Leo or fifth house kinds of energy says, the experiment of life says that, you know, romance might be in the air. With summer romances, oh yeah, it's a possibility. But this is at the experimental stage, taking a chance with somebody that I like them, you know. Where's it going to go? I don't know. But be honest with yourself. We're still in the Leonian cycle. The sun is still, you know, glaringly wanting to be the most of itself that it can be. Step into reality, but also recognize you are not alone in doing this. Everybody has that opportunity now. Yeah, everybody has. So the potential for feeling full of yourself, oh, yeah, it's there. But we're all feeling full of ourselves at this time. And the Mercury going direct, our capacity to think and feel and say things that, our communication, our curiosity, is being stimulated by what? Oh, possibly by a Uranian signature down there in Gemini, rattling and shaking things up. It could be a kind of a touchy-feely zone to enjoy yourself in. Look here at this chart. We have sextile between Pluto and this Saturn-Neptune conjunction with the moon tickling it. We have this trine going over here to Mercury. We have another sextile going over here to Mars and another trine going over. This is known as a mystic rectangle. Now, what the heck is a mystic rectangle? It says that the trines and the sextile energies, these are very, very compatible with one another. The oppositions forming across it say that at the same time, there is some tension afoot. Yeah. And what's this tension right here? Oh, yeah, Mercury and Pluto. And what's this one? Oh, yeah, Mars and Saturn across that axis. To effectively engage a mystic rectangle, one has to come to some level of grasping, if you will. You know, these opposition tensions that are being tied together by trines and sextiles, which say that There is a harmonious potential that is waiting for you to observe it. Part of these oppositions that are transpiring, if you can get out of your own way of, you know, creating tensions, following the tension lines in such a way that you can't get out of them. No. What do we have here? Mars and Pluto, the two rulers of Scorpio. The process of a dynamic level of transformation is being inspired here. Mars in Libra is bringing into this equation. It can't just involve you, it has to involve others. Libra, they are important in this equation. And our Mercury, of course, has already been invited into this game. I'm just sort of bouncing here through the week. The weekend comes, Friday's here, Saturday arrives. When Saturday arrives, look here, the moon is down here in Taurus. And remember, when the moon gets down to this Gemini Cancer area or the Sagittarius Capricorn areas, currently it's going out of bounds. Oh, yeah. The day before that, last quarter moon from 23 degrees Taurus, 23 degrees Leo. Last quarter moon, crisis in consciousness. Now, I have talked about a lot of different things today. And this particular lunar cycle, which began in Leo, had its full moon basically last night, which was the 9th here in the West Coast, in Aquarius. Happens to have been right on my Mars Mercury conjunction, only a degree away. You know, I may have been inspired to say more than I normally say. After all, my Mercury is retrograde when I was born, and this Mercury retrograde was being tickled as we started this consideration today when Mercury is still retrograde. So, this final quarter moon, crisis in consciousness. What, from a Taurian perspective that wants to come up with, you know, a value system that you can feel because it's the moon in square to the sun in Leo, which is wanting to, you know, take chances, expand the parameters of what it understands to be part of its kingdom. Is it the value structure of Taurus? The experience of what does it mean to be incorporated into the garden of Mother Earth? And Leo, you know, it's important. You know, if I didn't have Mother Earth to put my feet on, what value would it be to just be a soul? I remember a conversation that was taking place with Bruce Lipton once, talking about his, you know, parts, his 50 million cells in his body, and getting to that point of trying to understand what it meant to be. And he says, well, why do I need this body when my cell awareness is so much larger? Why don't I just be consciousness? And his 50 trillion cells all shouted out in unison, Bruce, what does chocolate taste like? Boom. Imagine that in the spirit, which is what Bruce was talking about. You don't have the five senses of what it means to be incarnate here on earth. Well, I don't know about you, but I like chocolate. And part of the experience, the incarnate experience that our soul is going through, is the excitement of the five senses and everything that they, tune into, if you will, in this life walk that we are about. And we're doing it together, each one of us with each other in this experiment that we're about. It's a very rich place. Not always easy, quite dynamic. As we go into Saturday, the moon here. This is a declination thing. This is north and south movement of the moon because the moon goes up and down. All the planets go up and down. And when they get past that, Sabian symbol thing, we're talking about 23 and a half degrees, the tilt of the axis of the planet. When they go beyond those two tropical, Tropic Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, limits, they're said to be out of bounds. They're no longer paying attention to what it is that the sun says, you need to do this. Or Saturn says, this is the appropriate way that something needs to be accomplished. Don't try and go beyond that. Well, when a planet is out of bounds, it no longer really is listening to those kinds of dictates. There's a more wild character, more of a Uranian kind of energy. Well, the moon goes out of bounds as we go into this next weekend. And it's, of course, going to be going down into our Gemini Cancer northern, this is northern zone of influence. So that's all I've got for this week. I know I probably talked more than I normally ever talk, but the energy, the full moon energy last night, it's got a hold of me. And I invite you to uh, share being spun out across the vast cosmos. That's all I got for this week. Um, Catch you all next week.